Today was the first full day of testimony in the Brian Walshe case taking place in Norfolk County, Massachusetts. Now, Brian is accused of murdering his wife, and that's his wife, Anna, and that's what he's being tried for. He's already admitted to lying to police to impede their investigation, and he's also admitted guilt in illegally disposing of a body. So he's admitted that, yes, he did. Forgive me. This is your warning. This is horrible. That he dismembered her. He put her into various trash bags and then dumped her in dumpsters all over town. He admitted to that part, but he won't cop to the murder. So they're trying him on the murder case. Now, they don't have a body. He's saying that she died suddenly in her sleep and he panicked and did this other thing instead. It's a very different way to go. I wouldn't have done that. I would have just called the paramedics, but that's me. But today is the first day of the trial. And we've got Nicholas Garino up on the stand. And Nicholas Garino is from the Massachusetts State Police. He's their data extraction guy. Now, I personally don't love this guy. I think he's fucked up other times in both the Karen Read case and in the Sandra Birchmore investigation. He has proven his extraction capabilities are lackluster. But here he is. He's sitting up on the stand and he has a binder that contains 3,677 records of the things he pulled off of iPads, MacBooks, and one iPhone from the residents that they were able to receive through a search warrant. Now, the search warrant for the information for the data extraction was from the dates of December 25th of 2022 to January 8th of 2023. So it's, a little over a week, right? Those are the dates that he can extract the data. And during those dates, he found 3,677 records have now been put into evidence. Now, the initial questioning goes fine for Garino. He's being asked some, and by the way, some of the questions were pretty rudimentary, like, what does this mean? What does this mean? He went through and he explained how you extract, how you have to use Celebrite, then to translate because it's encrypted and you have to do all this. So he does a really nice job of kind of explaining this and walking through for the jury exactly how this process works, how they make sure that the data is protected, how it's transferred from one thing to another. So he does a nice job. And they don't really go into too much detail. Yes, we talk about the text messages. Yes, we talk about some of that stuff, but there's some stuff that's just not even covered because they're more concerned about the logistics of it all. Like, this is a legitimate, and they're going to have this issue with anyone from the Massachusetts State Police that gets up on the stand because they've soiled their own reputation. And if I'm a defense attorney, the first thing I do is I attack this guy for all of the department's corrupt practices, right? Like, it's pretty easy to convince a jury, if you just say the right thing, that this guy's a bad witness. So the prosecution is making sure that they walk the jury through how every single thing that Nicholas Garino did was by the book and exactly how you're supposed to do it. Then Larry Tipton, the defense attorney, gets up there. And what I witnessed was like the three different personalities of Larry Tipton. It starts off where he kind of does this aw shucks, kind of unassuming, really tries to like disarm Garino a little bit by being like, it's just us two guys here, right? Like, he's standing at the podium. He doesn't have a single note in front of him. And he's just like, got his arms crossed. He's like, no, let's chat, right? Well, he's not getting what he needs out of Garino. Garino's kind of sticking to his guns. And he's like, no, sir, this is how it works. And he's explaining very well for the jury how it works. So then Tipton switches to the second one, which is like the absolute fucking dummy. And he's asking these questions that are beyond stupid. Like, I'm stunned that he's asking them. And he's talking about, if you go to an app, like for example, on your phone, if you go to Netflix and you search a movie on Netflix, he's asking Garino, well, why isn't that in the Google searches? And Garino's like, 'cause it's not a Google search. If you go to the app and you search within the app, the search is within the app's history. It's not in your Google history. Like, there were like 9 times where Garino's like, it's not a Google search. And I'm sitting here thinking, Tipton's the dumbest motherfucker out there. But then I realized, oh, wait, he's dumb like a fox. Because what he's trying to do is then he comes down for part 3 and he starts asking Garino these questions where he's kind of playing dumb, but he's trying to give the jury the indication that Garino's crooked. So he says, like, when you were pulling up all these searches and you're reviewing everything and you're going to the Commonwealth to recommend what they should put into evidence, like, how did you know what to pick? You picked any search that had to do with divorce. You picked all the Google searches that had to do with dismemberment and destroying a body and DNA. And he's like, but where's all the other stuff? Like, and he's kind of asking Garino, like, why'd you pick this? And did you go to this site to verify what it is? And Garino's kind of like, you can tell Garino is starting to get a little bit irritated because he's like, that's not my decision. Like, I just pulled all of the documentation between this date and this date. And he's like, but if you found something and you thought it was outside the dates, could you go back? And Garino's like, I had a search warrant. I followed these dates. And then they do a sidebar. And then Tipton has to come back and make an apology in front of the jury. He has to say, I was giving the court the impression that you, sir, as the trooper, were the decision maker. And you had the ability to go through all of the data and decide what then is presented to the Commonwealth. But it is now my understanding that you pulled everything and provided everything to the Commonwealth. And Garino's like, yes, the Commonwealth decides what comes into evidence, not me. And he asks about some adult movies from an adult site that were viewed, like downloaded and watched on Brian's MacBook. So of course it comes up in the data extraction that this site was visited, this was downloaded, this is the title of the movie that was watched, right? On the computer. That's part of the data extraction. And I'm wondering, why the hell is Tipton even bringing this up? Because one of the movies was called something like Cheating Wife, Husband, Revenge or something. And so he's like, did you just put that title in there because the title seemed deceptive? And Garino's like, that's the title of the movie that was watched. Like, you can tell Garino's starting to get a little bit bothered, like, you're accusing me of some shit that isn't true, dude. And my favorite part was when he's talking about like different websites that Brian would go to. And by the way, this is Brian's MacBook. These searches are all done on Brian's MacBook. It's registered to him. The serial number is registered to him. They verified that. The Apple ID is registered to him. So you feel pretty darn sure putting into evidence that these are Brian's searches. Like, this is the computer activity that Brian Walshe himself made. And there's this time where he goes like to the Chase banking app. Like, he goes to the Chase website. Now, we don't know why he's there. He's there for like, let's say he's there for 18 minutes. He could have been doing anything. He could have been balancing his checkbook. He could have been transferring money. He could have been chatting with the chatbot to tell them that his credit card was stolen. Like, we don't know what he did at the site, because once you go to a company's site, all your computer registers is the time that you were on that website. So the extraction is just saying he was on Chase. Like, that's all the data shows. He was on Chase. He logged onto Chase at this time. He logged out of Chase at this time. And Tipton's like, well, what was he doing there? And Garino's like, fuck if I know. And Tipton's like, why don't you know? Why didn't you investigate this? Why didn't you look into this? Now, I assure you, if they believed that Brian Walshe was like moving money or putting stuff in overseas accounts or doing something fishy, then they would have served Chase with a warrant and had Chase go into his banking activities, and you could have gotten that from Chase. You don't get that shit from Garino. But Tipton is making it seem like Garino was responsible for doing things like that. And that's why I say I think he's stupid like a fox, because he's trying to make the jury believe that Garino didn't do what he was supposed to do. And Garino's like, that's not in my purview. That wasn't in the search warrant. That wasn't what I was asked to do. I was asked to extract data, the activity that this computer went through. Well, isn't that part of the activity? Yes, but not once you visit the website. Then that becomes the website's activity. And at first I thought Tipton didn't understand that. And then I realized, no, he understands it full well. He's trying to fake out the jury. He's trying to make the jury think that Garino doesn't know what he's doing and that he did an incomplete job. So we get to the end of the day. Garino's going to come back for a little bit tomorrow, but tomorrow's lineup includes Uber, Lyft, JetBlue, like all of those, to make sure that there was no plans for her to leave town, and then 3 more members of the Massachusetts State Police.